Am I the a-hole for blocking and finally cutting off my dad? I'm 26 and non-binary, and for the past several years, I've been navigating a deeply complicated, often painful relationship with my dad. It's never been simple. As a kid, I thought we were close. I genuinely looked up to him. He was funny, protective, and we shared the kind of bond that made people say, "You're just like your dad." But things changed as I grew up. It wasn't until I was in college that the cracks in our relationship really started to show. I was old enough to understand nuance, to recognize manipulation, and to see what was really going on behind closed doors. My dad cheated on my mom. That was the beginning of it. And when he was caught, after the affair partner contacted my mom, he didn't crumble in remorse. He became someone I barely recognized. His treatment of my mom was horrifying, emotionally abusive, volatile, and filled with threats and gaslighting. It got so bad that they ended up in court. I don't know every single detail, as I wasn't living at home at the time, but I know enough. The abuse escalated into a full-blown legal matter. A judge issued a 1.5-year peace bond for my mom's safety. I was asked if I wanted to be included in the protection order too. At first, I hesitated. Part of me still hoped I could salvage some piece of the father I used to know. But eventually, after enduring years of verbal abuse, especially when I dared to challenge him or refused to blindly take his side, I agreed. And in hindsight, that decision gave me a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. But here's where things got complicated again. Once the peace bond expired, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe people can change. Maybe I owed it to myself, to that younger version of me who once adored him, to try again. So I reached out. At first, it was awkward but civil. We exchanged a few messages. Nothing deep, just small talk, but I allowed myself to feel a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this time he would listen. Maybe he'd acknowledge what he did, not just to me, but to our whole family. Then, he told me he was coming to my area. I live about 6 hours away from my hometown, and it had been around 3 years since I'd last seen him in person. He invited me to dinner with his girlfriend. Now, she's a whole other issue. I'll spare all the details, but to summarize, she said absolutely disgusting things online about my mom. She dead names and mocks our trans cousin, and she's generally a walking red flag. I told him I wasn't comfortable meeting her and asked if it could just be the two of us. You know, a one-on-one dinner between a parent and child after 3 years of no contact. He agreed. For a moment, I felt heard, but I should have known better. Just a few days later, he bailed. Said he couldn't leave her alone at the Airbnb. Couldn't step away for even an hour. It was like I didn't matter. Like the effort I'd made meant nothing. It stung. I needed some space to think, so I didn't respond right away. A few days later, he messaged asking if I was mad. I told him yes, and I explained why. And instead of apologizing or owning up to anything, he turned the tables on me. He said it was my fault we didn't meet up because I wasn't comfortable with his girlfriend. As if he had no choice. As if he wasn't the one choosing her over his own child. Then came the next layer of manipulation. He started complaining about my mom. Again. About court costs and how he was punished for things that never happened. It was the same exhausting script I'd heard for years. He's the victim, everyone else is lying, and he's been unfairly treated. It's like he's stuck in a loop where he's always the wounded party and never responsible for any of his actions. I tried shutting it down. I told him I wasn't going to rehash old arguments or get into a blame game. But he wouldn't stop. He couldn't stop. So I blocked him. And that was it. After all the years of back and forth, of hoping he'd grow or change or see me, not just as a child to control, but as a person with feelings and memories, blocking him felt like closing a door. Maybe even locking it. But it still hurts. I don't think people talk enough about how hard it is to walk away from a parent. Everyone tells you, if they're toxic, cut them off. And yes, that's true. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean you don't second-guess yourself at 2 a.m. wondering if you'll regret it someday. It doesn't mean you don't still want your dad to just be better. My friends, my roommates, even my mom have told me I made the right choice. That I've already given him more chances than he deserved. That he won't change. And I know that. Logically, I get it. But emotionally, it's still a mess. My mental health is better without him in my life. That's the truth. I feel lighter, less anxious, more like myself. But sometimes I still wonder, will I regret never seeing him again? What if something happens? What if I was wrong? I know I can't control his behavior. I know people only change when they want to. And I don't believe he wants to. Not really. But the grieving process is still real. I'm not grieving a death, but the loss of what could have been, of what I wanted him to be. And that still sucks. So, am I the whole for cutting off my dad? For finally drawing the line after years of emotional whiplash? If you've been through something similar, cutting off a parent, grieving someone still alive, I'd really appreciate your advice, stories, or even just validation that this kind of loss is a loss, and it's okay to feel conflicted about it. Thanks for reading if you made it this far.